Hello friend, welcome back to my kitchen. My name is Becky if you're new, and today we are making 11 freezer meals. The first thing I'm gonna start with is a breakfast dish. We have 2 breakfasts, 2 desserts, and 7 mains we are going to do today. It is now, that clock is not working, and neither is that one. I don't know what time it is. It's, I think around 10 a.m. And we're gonna get all these done really, really quickly. The first thing I'm gonna start with is sauteing some peppers and onions. These are some pre-diced peppers and onions from last year's garden I wanna use up. So I'm gonna get these in this pot. The next thing I'm gonna get in here is some onions from this year's garden that I already diced up. So I'm saving myself a step on having to chop and dice onions for this recipe. These peppers and onions are for a breakfast bake, and I'm gonna get another pot going on the stove with some oil I already put in here and some onions for a red sauce, because we're gonna make a pasta bake. So I have both these going. My sister-in-law is 38 weeks pregnant, so I am gonna make double of each of the recipes. One I'll keep for Josh and I, and one I am gonna gift to her. Some of these are brand new recipes to me. Some of them are tried and true, and I'm really excited to get all of them going. I have done hardly anything to prep for today other than make sure I have all the groceries in my house for these recipes. And I might still not have all of them. Time will tell if we get to every recipe. I think we'll be able to, because I've picked relatively easy ones, and I think they're all gonna be really good. So in this bowl, I've just put a bag of hash browns. Now I need to grate 2 cups of cheese. This is a mild cheddar that's a white cheddar, but you could use a sharp cheddar. I just need to use this block up, so that's what I'm gonna start with. We need cheese for a few recipes today, and I haven't grated any of it. There's probably 1 cup. We're gonna call that 2 cups right there. Now we're gonna season this with some salt, pepper, milk, sour cream, 12 eggs. I'm not doubling this recipe. I'm gonna make it into smaller pans so that we can get more breakfast out of it. But I am adding the potatoes. This recipe in particular didn't call for potatoes, and I had some frozen hash browns in my fridge or freezer, and I thought that that would kind of bulk up this meal a little bit. So we're gonna add those. And then I did have to get some store-bought eggs because I didn't think I would have quite enough eggs to get through all the recipes we are gonna be making today. But I will give these shells to the girls just like I always do. Now, when I was postpartum, I loved having freezer meals because it saved on dishes. That was one of the biggest things that I so enjoyed not having to do as much of, is dishes. And so I'm hoping that this can really help my sister-in-law out with her postpartum, because she has a toddler too. And so she's gonna be chasing a toddler around. I also in my freezer have some pre-cooked breakfast sausage. So I don't even have to cook breakfast sausage. I'm gonna get that in here. I always like to have pre-cooked sausage and bacon when I can in my freezer, because it makes prepping meals like this so easy. So now we're just waiting for the peppers and onions to saute, and this first recipe is done. Our onions for our red sauce are looking nice and caramelized, so I'm gonna go ahead and put some garlic in here. We're gonna saute those, and then I've got some tomato paste I need to use up. So I'm gonna add the rest of this jar into our pot. My wine has cooked down, my tomato paste is caramelized, so we can add our tomato sauce. I could use just marinara sauce and not go through the effort of making this, but I want to use up these jars of tomatoes from last year's garden. I used crushed tomatoes in this that have no seasoning other than salt, and so that's why I need to go ahead and season them up. I now make a ready to go marinara sauce where it's just open the jar and go, but I need to use these tomatoes up because these are from last year's garden. And so in here, I'm gonna add garlic, salt, pepper, crushed red pepper flakes, black pepper, basil, oregano, and some parsley. Stir that in, and then we're gonna let this simmer with the red wine while we do other things, and we will adjust for seasonings as needed. I have 2 disposable baking dishes here and then 1 regular one. This one I'm actually going to go ahead and bake today so that I don't have to think about breakfast for the next few days. I have the oven preheated to 350 degrees. So once I get these onions in here and get this all mixed up, then I will bake up breakfast for the week. We're gonna mix this all together, and now we've got breakfast for the week for Josh and I, and we've got breakfast for my sister-in-law. And all the dishes that I'm going to be gifting to my sister-in-law, I'm going to be using the disposable foil pans because I don't want her to have to do dishes when she bakes these other than, you know, maybe the fork or plate. I do end up gifting her some paper plates as well, just so that the less dishes she has to think about, the better. And then I don't want her to have to worry about trying to get me my pans back. So anything I gift to her is going to be disposable, so it's less stress and less thinking she has to do. We officially have 1 recipe done. That didn't take very long. We're gonna bake that up. I'm excited for that. That's gonna be a really great breakfast. Now let's get going on the other breakfast because that's gonna be another easy win, and we can check that off the list. Before we can make the next recipe, which we're gonna make pancakes, my sister-in-law makes pancakes a lot on the weekend for her son and her husband, and they really like pancakes. And I thought that it would be fun to make some mini pancakes so that if she doesn't have the energy, she can just pull those out and they can have some pancakes. But first I need to refill my flour container because I am completely out of flour in my kitchen. And while I'm at it, I've got sugar here. I'm out of my sugar too. We're gonna be making 2 cookie recipes. The 2 cookies we're gonna be making are a chewy sugar cookie. I just found these 2 recipes, and a soft, chewy chocolate chip cookie that has cream cheese in it. I've always wanted to try a chocolate chip cookie with cream cheese, and so I'm excited to see how this one turns out. And I love having cookie dough in my freezer, and I don't have any. And when I was in postpartum, we loved being able to pull out some cookie dough out of the freezer, 2 or 3 cookies, and bake them up, and we could have a quick and fast and comforting dessert with no effort and no cleanup. Cleanup is the biggest thing. So here I'm getting this full. So I want to get some chocolate chip cookies in my freezer because I don't have any chocolate chip cookie dough in my freezer, and I want to get some in my sister-in-law's freezer. For the pancakes, we're going to start with 3 cups of all-purpose flour. A 1/4 cup of sugar, 2 tablespoons of baking powder, and I just got a new one, so I'm going to open it up here. And I just checked the recipe, and it does say 2 tablespoons. I wanted to double check that, just make sure. I'm going to mix that together. I'm going to sprinkle in 2 teaspoons of salt. I'm going to crack in 2 large eggs, 2½ cups of milk, and then in this measuring cup I need to melt 8 tablespoons of butter, which is 1 stick of butter. So I'm going to go melt that. I guess this is not only make 11 recipes with me, but also restock the pantry or the kitchen supplies because I'm out of vanilla. So I'm going to go ahead and pour some of my homemade vanilla into my jar that I keep in my drawer here. And we need 2, perfect, teaspoons. I might as well just go ahead and do that. I'm gonna do a little extra. Probably I did 2 tablespoons of vanilla. We'll need this for the cookies too, so I figured I would go ahead and get it restocked. Our butter is melted, so we can get that in here. And we're gonna whisk this together. Super basic, simple pancake batter recipe. What gave me the idea to make these mini pancakes, you're going to see how we're going to make them into little silver dollar pancakes, is when we were shopping together at Costco last, I saw them in the freezer section and they were like $12 or $13 for a box of like 40 of them. So we're gonna make that amount today, and I didn't do the math on how much this cost me, but this was pennies on the dollar, and I got to control all the ingredients that went into it. And I think if I do this again, I will quadruple this recipe because they are so delicious. It's okay if there's a few little lumps in it. So I want to test to see if this is hot, and it is hot, so I'm going to turn it down just a little bit. I've got my roaster pan out with my pancake batter, and I've got a cookie scoop because I want to make these little. So let's see if I can do that. This batter smells fantastic. Oh, a little dark. Darn it. Okay, so I'm going to keep the dark ones. These were so delicious. Even the ones that I overcooked, I went ahead and snacked on those while I was cooking because I hadn't eaten breakfast yet, and they tasted just fine. But I did notice with this recipe that because they're so thick, like the batter is pretty dense, it is better to cook them on a lower temperature so that you can make sure you cook them all the way through. I really, really, really liked using this little cookie scoop to do this. This is the first time I've ever used a cookie scoop to make pancakes, and it is what I'm going to do moving forward. I do have larger cookie scoops, so if I wanted to make larger pancakes in the future, I will just always use a cookie scoop because you can get kind of more even shaped pancakes, and especially with this batter, because it's a pretty thick batter, I could just click the handle and it would plop out onto my griddle. Now I am using some spray here with this. Normally I would use butter. Oops, we dropped one. I end up just putting it back on the griddle to finish cooking the batter that got on it that wasn't cooked. But I am using spray today just because I didn't feel like getting butter out, but I think using butter would even make this taste really, really delicious. The awesome thing about when you make your own convenience foods is you can control the ingredients and you can control the cost a lot more. And if you ever want to feel inspired and know what can I freeze, what can I meal prep, just walk down the freezer aisle of any grocery store, and whatever you see in the frozen section, you can attempt to try to make that at home. I wanted to give this recipe a try because look how fluffy these pancakes are. They're incredible, and they smell. These are the best homemade pancakes I've ever made. Look how fluffy they are. Those 2 tablespoons of baking powder really fluff them up. If you've ever had crusty pancakes, this is exactly what they taste like. So good. I decided to pull out a drying rack or a cooling rack and have the pancakes cool individually on this so that they will package up really nicely for the freezer. The pancakes are done, and they might not be perfectly even in color, but let me tell you, they have absolutely fantastic flavor and probably the best pancake recipe I've ever made. So what I'm gonna do next is I need cheese because we are gonna make a baked macaroni, and I found a new recipe that I wanted to try, and it calls for a bunch of good cheese. So I need to get some shredded because I don't have any really shredded in my house. So that is what I'm gonna take a second and do. It sometimes helps to get this all done before you get going on a cooking day like this, but today we're just doing it all together. I didn't have an opportunity to do any prep, and so we're just going to get it all done together. I could pull out my food processor or something to shred this, but I already got this one dirty, and I think I'm just gonna take a second and I'm going to shred it by hand, get a little arm workout. So I've got a mild-ish cheddar cheese, a very, very sharp cheddar cheese, and this right here is a Gruyere cheese. And the recipe for this baked macaroni and cheese calls for these 3 different cheeses. I'm gonna go ahead and get this oven preheated to 425 degrees because we're gonna be baking the meatballs in here. And I wanna taste the red sauce. It's reduced down quite a bit, and I wanna make sure we can adjust the seasonings if needed now instead of later. The eggs are almost done. I'm gonna go ahead and turn this off because I don't think it needs to reduce anymore. Okay, that needs quite a bit of tweaking. We're not quite there yet. I'm gonna add a little bit of garlic powder, some more pepper, salt, a touch of sugar. I'm gonna add some more onion powder. Don't be afraid to season and taste and adjust as needed. I'm gonna let that sit there for just a minute. I'm gonna let everything kind of melt together, come together, and then we'll taste it again. I'm super happy with the way my sauce tastes now. I've adjusted the seasonings a couple more times. The way that I can my tomatoes is different than when I canned these. And so it just took a little bit more tweaking, which is fine. Here is our breakfast for the week. This smells incredible. It's nice and set, so I'm gonna let this cool back here. Well, we go ahead and get the meatballs made. So I have my stove off. One of the best things to bulk prep, I think, are any kind of meatball or meatloaf or anything like that, because it really doesn't take that much more work to prep a whole big bowl of it as opposed to just making it for one night's worth of meatballs. So that's what I'm gonna do. I am making meatballs to go with that marinara sauce, but then I'm also going to make just a bunch of meatballs so that I can use them in any application that I want to in the coming, oh, my oven's preheated for the meatballs, in the coming month or so. So I am making, let's see, 4 times the recipe. So I have 4 pounds of Italian sausage, 4 pounds of ground beef, and we're gonna season all this up, get them rolled out, and then we're going to cook them. But first I gotta get them out of these packages. You can freeze meatballs fresh and then cook them when you go to cook them for dinner, or you can cook them and freeze them already cooked. And that's what we're gonna do today. Just so that when we go to use them, we're just reheating them. And this is an Italian flavored meatball. I do like to make sometimes just a plain meatball, one that doesn't have the Italian sausage in it, so that you can kind of turn it into, say if you wanted to put it in sweet and sour sauce or something, you have a little bit more flexibility. But I haven't had an Italian style meatball in my freezer for, I think it's been like a year and a half or so. So I thought this just sounded really good, and it's hard to go wrong with these flavors. I've just washed my hands really well so we can get all of this seasoned up. I'm adding my eggs. There was an egg incident, that's why the eggs are already pre-cracked. And now I'm gonna go ahead and get some oregano in here. And I'm gonna take the oregano in my hands and kind of break it up a little bit. Add a little bit more. It's basil. Now I have parsley. Breadcrumbs, pepper. Now this is 8 pounds of meat, so I'm gonna add my salt, garlic powder, onion powder. And now I'm gonna get in there with my hands and mix all of this up together. I almost forgot one of the most important ingredients, and that is Parmesan cheese. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that added in now. And then I also like to add to my meatballs, and I almost forgot this too, is some freeze-dried zucchini. And that kind of acts as a breadcrumb. I didn't quite put enough breadcrumbs in earlier when I put the breadcrumbs in. So I'm glad that I did not completely forget to add the freeze-dried zucchini and Parmesan cheese. I have my small cookie scoop here because I want to make small meatballs, because I want to be able to use these for meatball subs or spaghetti and meatballs, and I just think small meatballs would be good for that. So we are going to just start making the meatballs. I figured the fastest way to do this would be to scoop out all the meatballs first and then go back and roll them and then pop them in the oven. So I end up getting one cookie sheet done, scooped out, rolled out, and then I pop those in the oven, and then I continue on another cookie sheet. It ends up taking 2 full cookie sheets in order to get all these meatballs done. But homemade meatballs are so delicious, so good, and they're so easy. So if you want a really easy meal prep, find whatever your favorite meatball recipe, whether it is just a kind of a generic beef meatball or one that is with ground turkey or ground sausage or whatever it might be. Prep a couple recipes worth, have that for dinner if you don't want to do a big cooking day like I am doing today, and have it for dinner, and then put the rest in the freezer, whether you pre-bake them or you put them in the freezer frozen. If you put them in the freezer raw. Sometimes I like to have raw meatballs in the freezer, and sometimes I like to have them pre-baked. So today I chose pre-baked so that when I or my sister-in-law go to reheat it, we don't have to worry about making sure it's cooked all the way through. We just know we need to reheat it. And so that's why I chose this on this day. But homemade meatballs, I like the texture better than a store-bought frozen meatball. For some reason, the store-bought frozen meatballs are a little off-putting to me. I'm not exactly sure what it is about the texture. And so I just love having homemade meatballs in my freezer. So now I've got this second tray almost all filled, and I was running out of space. So I did actually take a second and roll them so that I can get all of them on this one cookie sheet. I was determined not to have to do a third round of meatballs. So I made a little bit more space, and we're going to continue to roll these out. This did take quite some time because I chose to do these itty bitty meatballs, because one thing I was thinking for these meatballs was, for at least Josh and I, is to do meatball subs. And I figured meatball subs with smaller meatballs would be easier to eat than large meatballs. But if you want this to go in half the time, make the meatballs 2 or 3 times this size. Our first round of meatballs are almost done in the oven. I want them to be completely browned and done before I get the second tray of meatballs in the oven. But in the meantime, we can get our sauce into our baking dishes. I did go ahead and get the counter all nice and clean. Our red sauce is here. Now you could cook up some pasta and mix pasta in with this, but I am just gonna have the red sauce and pasta in this baking dish so that when I or my sister-in-law go to cook this, we can get some hoagie rolls and turn this into meatballs and subs, or we could cook up some pasta and put it with pasta. But it's gonna give us a lot more flexibility by not putting the noodles in it right away. You could just cook up the meatballs, top with cheese, and serve it with garlic bread and vegetable. You could do whatever you want. So I'm just gonna put a little bit of red sauce at the bottom of this pan, both these pans. I think I'm gonna have enough red sauce and meatballs to get 3 pans out of this. I just rinsed out the pot that had the marinara sauce. I filled that up with water so we can get some water to boil for the baked macaroni we're gonna make. Our first round of meatballs are done. So I'm gonna carefully get these out of the oven, put these over by our red sauce, and I'm gonna get these meatballs into the oven. These meatballs do have some grease that needs to be drained off of them, so I'm gonna use this spider to pick them up off the tray. I'm just gonna plop them in this red sauce. So there's so much flexibility you can do when you go to cook this. You could even freeze this in a Ziploc bag if you want. That might take up a little less room if you want to reheat it on the stove instead of in the oven. Look at the color we were able to get on that meatball. That is absolutely beautiful. So we're gonna get enough meatballs for 3 of these spaghetti and meatballs, plus probably 2 bags of just plain meatballs that I can put in the freezer and use for a later date. I'm gonna let these cool completely. The sauce is still warm and the red sauce, this one needs more meatballs, but I'll have to wait till that comes out of the oven. Set that aside. Very delicious. I figured I should probably taste one of these meatballs. So good. We are making great progress. And this recipe right here is why I decided that I didn't want to add pasta to the meatballs and marinara sauce, because we are going to be making baked macaroni. So we are going to go ahead and I went ahead and I got my water on to boil for the pasta. And then I need to get my butter on. I just rinsed this pan out. This is what we made the pancakes in. And I have 12 tablespoons of butter here because we are doubling this recipe. We're gonna have the butter melt. While the butter's melting, I'm gonna go ahead and measure out what I need for the milk. So I need 2 cups of cream. There's 2 cups right there. Plus, I need 6 cups of milk, and I'm gonna wait so that I don't mess up how much milk I need. To the butter, I'm gonna add 2/3 cup of flour. We're gonna cook that together. We might get this sauce made in the time it takes for that water to come to a boil, because we already have the cheese shredded at this point. The recipe I'm following doesn't call for any mustard, but I usually put about a teaspoon or 2 of mustard in my macaroni and cheese, so I'm gonna go ahead and get that in there. Now that our butter is melted and our flour is cooked, I can add our milk and cream. That's our cream. To the cream, I need to add 6 cups of milk. I'm gonna go ahead and season this sauce up now with some black pepper. If the black bothers you in a white sauce and you have white pepper, go ahead and use white pepper instead. I don't have white pepper, so I'm just gonna use the black pepper and some salt. While the white sauce is thickening up, I'm gonna go ahead and package up these pancakes because they are nice and cool. I did get my 2 baking dishes. We're gonna put our macaroni in. And I'm gonna gift all of these to my sister-in-law because I think my nephew is really gonna enjoy them. And I didn't make a tremendous amount. So I'm gonna go ahead and put on here dollar pancakes and the date. These are some of the best pancakes I have ever made, and I'm really excited I found this recipe. I saw pancakes you could get at Costco when we went shopping together, and you can buy them at the store already made up like this, and I think it was like $11 for a little box. And so if you're already making pancakes, say on a Saturday morning, a way that you could help yourself in the future is maybe double the recipe, make twice as much, and freeze half of them. You don't need to put any parchment paper or anything in between, just 2 layers, and once they're completely cool, you can get them in the freezer. These 2 are cool, and so I'm gonna get the lid on and I'm gonna pop these right in the freezer just like this. And then we need to get these in here. Once these meatballs cool, then I'll pop this in the freezer. Once it's frozen or pretty firm, then I will wrap it in foil and plastic wrap. And then I want to get the rest of these meatballs off this grease. Once these cool, I will just pop these in a freezer Ziploc bag and I will freeze them. I think our water is boiling for our pasta. I do want to season my water before we put our pasta in there. We are doubling this recipe, so I need to cook 2 pounds of pasta. Anytime I make pasta for a freezer meal, I always cook it about 2 or 3 minutes less than the package says. Woo! So that it doesn't get completely overcooked when you go to bake it. So this pasta, this is the large macaroni noodles. This is my favorite kind of pasta to make baked macaroni with when I can find it. And it says for al dente 6 minutes. So let's set a timer for 5. I did turn the stove off this white sauce for just a minute because I didn't want it to scorch while I was dealing with the meatballs. So I'm turning it back on and I think it's almost ready for the cheese. Not quite yet. I want to thicken it up just a little bit more. Then we're gonna add the cheese. I'm gonna taste this for seasoning. There will be some saltiness coming from the cheese, but I just wanna make sure that this tastes good on its own. That is delicious. How can you go wrong with cream, butter, a little bit of mustard, salt? Divine. So I think this is ready for our cheese now. We're not gonna add all of this cheese. There's something really interesting about this recipe and how it's written. And you layer the pasta and the cheese together, which I think is super interesting. I'm gonna turn the stove off. I just turned the stove off while I mix the cheese in. One way I like to make baked macaroni into a full meal is I will sometimes add chicken and broccoli to it. I'll add peas to it, and that way it can just be a one and done meal. I asked my sister-in-law if she would like it that way. She said she would just prefer it to be macaroni so that if she decides to grill up some chicken or make some meatballs or do something like that, then she has a little bit more flexibility with it. It can either be a main or a side. So we're just gonna make macaroni and cheese, and it is so good. For my sister, when she had her, I can't remember if it was her first or second baby, I made her baked macaroni and cheese and sweet and sour meatballs. That combination sounds odd, but if you, I baked up both of them for Josh and I for the week for meal prep, since I already was making one for my sister, one of each. I went ahead and just popped them in the oven for Josh and I, so I didn't have to cook for the next 5 days or so. And to top your macaroni and cheese with a sweet and sour meatball, sounds weird, but it was so good. I do have that video if you want to watch me make that. It's a different macaroni and cheese recipe than this one, but just as delicious, I'm sure. Let's taste this with the Gruyere cheese. I don't think I've ever put Gruyere cheese in a baked macaroni before, and I think that's a brilliant idea. Okay, that elevates baked macaroni and cheese to something super fancy and delicious. If you can believe it, the recipe still calls for more cheese for the macaroni, but we're not going to need all of it. So I'm going to go ahead and package up what we don't need, and I'm going to get this into the fridge for later use. I knew I was going to be shredding up more cheese than I needed for just this recipe. Our noodles are nice and done, so I'm going to go strain these, and I'll be right back. I do have the stove off. Oh, I just realized, darn it. Okay, I forgot to do something. Oh well. I was only supposed to put half the pasta, layer some more cheese, and then the rest of the pasta, and then top with breadcrumbs, but I totally forgot. I think it's gonna be okay, just like this. So I am going to, for Josh and I's dinner tonight, I think I'm gonna make this macaroni for Josh and I's dinner, is I'm gonna add some of these meatballs, and this is gonna be our dinner tonight. I'm gonna go ahead and top each one of these with a little bit extra cheese since we didn't put it in the middle. And then I'm going to top with breadcrumbs. These are homemade breadcrumbs, but you could use panko breadcrumbs or whatever kind of breadcrumbs you have. I just love keeping homemade ones on hand because I think they taste wonderful, and it's a great way to not waste breadcrumbs. So I'm gonna top with a little bit of extra cheese just because I didn't put butter on the breadcrumbs. I should have probably put the breadcrumbs on first, but I love the crunch that breadcrumbs on the top of baked macaroni and cheese is. So here's our dinner tonight. Here is a dinner for my sister-in-law when she needs one. I'm gonna get the rest of these Italian meatballs into the freezer and the date. Oh my goodness, these would be good on pizza. I just had that thought, a meatball pizza, yum. I'm really glad I made them nice and teeny tiny like this. I'm gonna go pop these in the freezer, and then I'm gonna unload my dishwasher. I did not start with an unloaded dishwasher. That is one of my biggest tips in having a stress-free freezer meal cooking day like this, is start with an empty dishwasher so you can load the dishes as you go. But my reality is I forgot to turn the dishwasher on last night, and so I had to run it now, and I have been collecting dishes. Some of these are clean. These were actually in my oven, stored in my oven, so I don't have to wash these. But from here over, I need to unload and load the dishwasher, and then we are going to do phase 2, which we've done all the cooking part of the recipes we need to do. These are really, really easy dump and put in the freezer recipes, and I'm really looking forward to them. I just want to be able to clean up so that I can think a little bit better moving into the second phase of this marathon cooking day. I have not even finished my first cup of coffee yet. I just put some ice in it because I don't feel like reheating it for the millionth time. So I'm gonna make sure I finish that while I get this dishwasher unloaded. it feels much better to have the kitchen kind of reset. So the recipes we've already made are the pancakes, the meatballs, the red sauce we needed to make, the breakfast casserole, the mac and cheese. So we still have our 2 cookie recipes and our 4 recipes that are going to go in freezer bags that are dump and go and really easy. So I need some onions because we're gonna make Philly cheesesteak. That's what we're gonna make now. And I'm really excited about this recipe. I'm gonna grab out some of my bag holders because we're gonna get these right into the bags. We need to slice some onions for the Philly cheesesteak and some peppers. And I harvested the peppers yesterday, so they're nice and fresh and delicious from the garden. Anytime I freeze raw meat, I always use a Ziploc bag. And I think we're gonna get 2 of these. If I did not mention it before, I will link all the recipes that I'm making down below. So if you're interested in them, they can be found down in the description box, along with the equipment that I'm using today. So like my cutting board, my knife, my bag holders, all these pieces of equipment definitely make a freezer meal cooking day much, much easier. For a long time, I didn't use these little bag holders, and it's made a big difference. It's so funny how something so small can really make the experience that much more pleasant. So for the Philly cheesesteaks, I want the peppers and onions sliced. I don't want them diced. So I am getting about the equivalent of what 1 green bell pepper would be sliced in each one of these bags, and 1 onion sliced in each one of these bags. So again, just like the recipes we've already made, one of these bags is going to be for Josh and I, and 1 is going to be for my sister-in-law. What I did for my sister-in-law is I went ahead and I text her the recipes so that she has the recipes and the cooking instructions on how to cook it when she wants to go ahead and cook it. I am actually making these Philly cheesesteaks for dinner tonight, and I'm going to make some homemade hoagie rolls, and I'm really looking forward to having this for dinner tonight. What I really wanted to make this Philly steak with was this really thin beef you can get at Costco. Sometimes my Costco has it, sometimes it doesn't. They didn't have it the 2 last times I went because they only do it at a certain time of day. So I am going to cut up my meat really thin for this Philly steak. And I went ahead and I needed to purchase beef for this from the store because I didn't have what I thought would be good in my freezer from the half a cow I purchased. I only have ground beef and then some like the brisket and chuck roast and things that I don't think would make good Philly steak. I've used all this steak. So what I purchased was beef loin tri-tip steak. And this is very, very cold. And I think that this is twice as much than we are gonna need for today for the Philly steak. So what I'll do is I will package up half of it in this freezer bag just as steak. Maybe I'll put it in the fridge and we'll have steak tacos or something later this week. But what I've got here is this meat that I want to cut extremely thinly. And I want to cut it against the grain. So I can see when I look at this piece of meat that it depends on each piece. Each piece is a little bit different. I'm gonna cut off any big pieces of fat first. There's not too much of that. I can see on this piece of meat, the grain is running this way, so I wanna cut on the opposite side of that. So I'm gonna cut it this way, and I am going to take this very sharp knife, and I am going to try to cut it as thinly as I can. Can you see how thin that is? This is gonna take just a second and a little bit of patience, but it's gonna be worth it, making sure I get it nice and thin, so it's gonna be super, super tender when we go to cook it. It probably would make this even easier if these were par frozen. That's why my Costco only has that really thinly sliced beef sometimes, because what they do is they par freeze it before they slice it. And I think they use an electric slicer. And so it's just if the meat is ready for that day for them to slice it up. Now, I think this would be really good on a Blackstone. I don't have one of those. Let me know if you guys have one and if you guys enjoy it. I've seen all the videos on it online and they look like a ton of fun. But I think the way that I will cook this up is I will get my cast iron piping hot, I mean screaming hot. And then I will put a little bit of oil in it and I will drop this after it thaws into that, and I will cook it really hot really quickly. Get the onions nice and caramelized, the beef nice and tender, and then top it with provolone cheese, get some hoagies, and toast those up and serve it like that. I'm really looking forward to this. I have never made this before, actually. So this is going to be a new thing for me. We only have a couple more ingredients to add, and I'm going to add some salt, pepper, a little bit of oil, and garlic. And we have 2 more meals done. I get these off. I think this is so beautiful, the green, the white, and the beef. And get the air out. I'll freeze this flat like this. I'm gonna go pop these in the freezer. The next 3 meals are chicken recipes, and I'm gonna use chicken thighs for all 3 of them. I'm gonna go ahead and label all the bags. I'm gonna do 2 of each, 1 for my sister-in-law, 1 for me, and I'm gonna trim all the fat off the chicken thighs at one time so that it'll just be easier. And I want all of the bags ready to go. So as I trim them, I can get the chicken right into the bag. So first one we're gonna do is orange chicken. And the date, don't wanna forget the date. I only have a few freezer meals. I think I have like 2 or 3 freezer meals in my freezer right now because I've been enjoying keeping a clean kitchen. Freezer meals can be used for a multitude of reasons. They can be used, 1, on days you don't want to cook. They can be used because you don't have the time or the energy, or they could be used because you don't want to messy up the kitchen. That's why I've been using them lately. 2, they can prevent you from the last minute takeout, so you can save yourself some money because takeout has gotten so expensive. And honestly, it tastes better than takeout. So the next one we're gonna do is chicken satay. It's an easy peanut sauce, and this recipe looks great. You can use it in the Instant Pot or crock pot. The recipe has all the different ways you can make it. It's like a peanut chicken. I'm excited about this one. And then last but not least, we're gonna do just teriyaki chicken. I like this, I like it on the grill. I like cooking a bag of this up and just keeping teriyaki chicken cooked in the fridge to top on salads for easy dinners. The greens are starting to come out of the garden again, and I really enjoy just having cooked chicken in the fridge, and teriyaki chicken is one of the ones we like to have cooked in the fridge. So the first chicken marinade we're gonna make is the easy peanut chicken satay, and I've got all the chicken prepped for the 3 recipes, the 3 chicken marinades we're gonna make. I've got 2 cans of coconut milk because we're gonna put 1 can in each one of these bags. Next, we're gonna put some sesame oil. The recipe calls for red pepper flakes. I'm gonna use the Korean red pepper flakes because they're not quite as hot. And then 2 tablespoons of cumin. This is not cumin. 2 tablespoons of yellow curry powder. This is cumin. We're gonna put 2 teaspoons of cumin, 2 teaspoons of salt. We're gonna put a knob of garlic in each one, along with a knob of fresh ginger. And then we need some fresh lime juice. I have 2 limes here. The recipe calls for 3 tablespoons of lime juice. I'm just gonna put the juice of 2 limes in each one of the bags. Honey. I think I'm just going to go ahead and use the rest that's in this jar. Soy sauce. And then last but not least, a 1/2 cup of peanut butter in each one. I am so excited about this recipe. I cannot wait to try it. So I'm going to get the air out of it, mix it up, and I think this is gonna be so good on rice and some steamed vegetables. I think I'm gonna keep one of these out and we will have it this week and I won't have to thaw it because I'm just gonna stick it in the fridge and I'll let it marinate because maybe we'll have this for dinner tomorrow because I think this sounds so good. I already made up that chicken satay. I put it in the crock pot and it was phenomenal. So I will link that recipe. In that recipe, she writes how to cook it in the Instant Pot or crock pot. And I put it in the crock pot. I made some steamed rice to go along with it. And I also put some frozen peas in it, and that was our dinner. So here we've got some orange chicken. This is super easy. It's ginger, garlic, orange juice, soy sauce, Korean red pepper flakes, which I can link down below. They are so delicious. Honey, salt, and pepper, and some sesame oil. So just a really simple orange chicken marinade. And I'm gonna use the rest of this honey jar, so that's why it's okay that I'm putting it into the bag and want to get every last drop of that beautiful honey used up. And the way I cook this recipe and the next recipe I'm about to make, which is the teriyaki recipe, is I just throw it on the grill. Even though we are getting into cooler weather, I love cooking on the grill. I went 6 years with Josh and I married without a grill, and then we bought a grill last year and we have gotten our money's worth. If you don't have a grill, we have a gas grill and I love our propane grill. I love being able to go out there and just turn the grill on, throw chicken on it. Sometimes I'll even grab 2 different marinades. Here is the teriyaki chicken. So this has brown sugar, oil, soy sauce, sesame oil, Korean red pepper flake, garlic, and ginger. Put it all in the bag, let that marinate. But sometimes I'll grab 2 different marinades. So maybe I will grab, in this case, I guess I don't have that many marinades in my freezer right now. So maybe I would grab an orange chicken and a teriyaki chicken. But normally I try to grab 2 different ones, like maybe the smashed chicken I like to make and an Asian style one, like one of these teriyaki chickens. And I'll grill those both up so that I can have meal prep and extra chicken in my refrigerator. I love having cooked chicken in my fridge for making quesadillas or salads or burrito bowls or whatever it might be, or even just, warming up some chicken and having that with maybe some fruit or something for a quick lunch. Especially when I'm doing a big cooking day like this, I like to have just some cooked protein in the fridge. So now what I'm going to do is get all the air out, get the ingredients all mixed up, and these are ready to go into the freezer. I always freeze my marinated meats flat because then they thaw a lot quicker. And I used to think, what in the world was the point of having marinated meats in my freezer? And the thing that's really nice about it is you can pull it out in the morning, and as it's thawing, it's marinating, and you don't have to worry about getting all the ingredients to marinate. So
that's why I've enjoyed it. I didn't do it for years, and I started doing it a couple years ago, and I have never looked back. So whatever your favorite marinade is, go ahead and get some meat marinated in your freezer because it's amazing to have. Now I'm preheating the oven for dinner because I want to go ahead and get dinner made, and I cleaned up the kitchen. I wanted to get the counters nice and sanitized after having the raw chicken on there. Anytime, after the meatballs, I got those done, I sanitized my counters. After I did the chicken, I want to get my counters sanitized so that now when I go to, do the next step on whatever it might be, I've got a clean kitchen. So here I put in my inside freezer the meatballs for my sister-in-law and her breakfast bake so that they would be pretty frozen. That's the one thing about using foil pans is they're kind of flimsy. And so it's kind of nice if they have frozen, or at least par frozen, before you package them up. So I am going to do 2 layers of foil on top, and then I do 2 layers of saran wrap, and I write on the foil what it is so she knows what it is. And I gave her all the directions on how to cook everything so that she's got that. This is how I used to package all my freezer meals up for myself, but now I like to use those baking dishes that have the snap lids. I think it's a lot less work because it is work to wrap all of this up, and it's a little bit less waste. But my goal for my sister-in-law is less dishes, so that's why everything is disposable for her, so she can spend time snuggling her baby and not worrying about washing a glass dish.
Dinner is in the oven, and I have the other oven preheating to 350 so that we can bake some of these cookies. Most of these are gonna go in the freezer for my sister-in-law and I in the freezer, but I wanna try them, so I'm gonna bake a couple of them. The first one we're gonna start with is going to be this soft chocolate chip cookie that's got cream cheese in it. How interesting is that? And I am learning that I really should be weighing my flour. I think that's why my cookies aren't spreading enough. It's because I'm putting too much flour in my cookies. So I did pull out my scale, and I'm going to weigh the flour, even though I don't enjoy doing that because the picture of these cookies looks phenomenal, and I want to try to have some really good cookies here. So I've got my stand mixer out. The first thing we need to do is actually cream the cream cheese and butter together. I've pulled out some butter and cream cheese from the freezer, butter from the freezer, cream cheese from the refrigerator, and I had them sit at room temperature this whole time we've been in the kitchen, so they're nice and soft. So we need 10 tablespoons of unsalted butter. I'm not gonna weigh the butter and the cream cheese because I can easily get the correct amount, I think, by looking at the side of the butter and cream cheese, but I am gonna weigh out the flour. And it looks like I should weigh out the sugar, so I'm gonna weigh the sugar out too. We need 10 ounces of softened butter, or room temperature butter, which is what I have here. And then I'm gonna cut a 1/4 cup of cream cheese, which is 2 ounces. I'm gonna mix this together. Got my scale here.
Now I'm going to go ahead and weigh out in grams the white sugar and brown sugar to our creamed mixture. And I am going to link a cookie cookbook down in the description box for you. It is from the author who wrote this cookie recipe and the next one we're going to make, because her cookies are phenomenal, and I just ordered her cookbook and I'm really excited. I've tried about 6 or 7 of her online blog recipes, and I'm really excited to get her hardback cookie cookbook.
Okay, perfect. I just added 2 large eggs. We're gonna whisk that in. Vanilla. Now we're gonna weigh out the flour. I'm gonna pretend to weigh out my flour like I am with just measuring cups, and I'm gonna see how far off or close I am with the flour. So I'm fluffing my flour, and that's 1 cup. And that would be 2 cups right there, and we're at 288 grams. And we need to get to 349. Oh, see, that's 2.5 cups, and we're at 362. So I would be putting an extra 1/4 cup of flour in here if I was not weighing it out. So it's definitely important you weigh it out. And this is driving home the fact that weighing is so important, because I would have added an extra 6 tablespoons of flour to this mixture. And so as much as I don't enjoy weighing, it is good. It's good practice. So I'm gonna practice. I'm gonna practice at weighing. So we need 1 teaspoon of baking soda and 1 teaspoon of baking powder each. So we'll get those in next. Gonna mix that together. And then this is a really interesting ingredient as well. So not only does this recipe have cream cheese in it, it has cornstarch in it. We need 2 teaspoons of cornstarch. I don't have cornstarch, I have tapioca starch, but you can use those interchangeably. And this is a 1/2 teaspoon, that's why I'm doing it 4 times. And last but not least, well, we're gonna add chocolate chips too. We're gonna add 1 teaspoon of salt, mix this together. It's almost combined, so now we're gonna add our chocolate chips. And we're supposed to add 2 cups of chocolate chips. I think I'm gonna add 1½ cups of chocolate chips. A very soft dough. I have a cookie sheet here that I'm going to put the dough on to stick in the freezer and flash freeze before we put them in bags. And this cookie sheet, we're gonna bake the cookies that we're gonna try tonight. I've got my cookie scoop and my dough. I'm gonna push them down just a little bit. I am so excited about these cookies. I'm gonna get these 6 in the oven, and all of these are gonna go into the freezer. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. So we got 26. That's so funny. That's exactly what the recipe said it would make. I don't think I've ever made the exact amount of cookies a recipe calls for. Into the freezer, and then we'll make our sugar cookies. I'm just gonna use the same bowl to make the sugar cookies. Those cookies are supposed to bake for 10 to 11 minutes. And it does say it's best to chill them first, but I'm not chilling them. They're going straight into the oven. Okay, the next recipe, we need 2 sticks, right? Yeah, 2 sticks of butter. That's caught me off guard a couple times where I read 2 sticks and I think 2 cups, but 2 sticks means 1 cup of butter. So we're gonna get this in our mixer. This recipe doesn't call for any brown sugar, and there's gonna be a little bit of residual brown sugar in here. I'm not worried about that at all. I'm gonna use this scale again. And I'm gonna add salt. We're gonna whisk this together. Now I'm gonna add 1 large egg, the whole egg, and then 1 egg yolk. Vanilla. And scrape the sides down. And that's it for this recipe. I'm just gonna mix this together. Oh, we do need to roll these cookie dough balls out in sugar, and this cookie dough is way too sticky at this point to do that. So I think I'm gonna use my cookie scoop and just get them into the dough ball shape. And then later, once they're cooled, I can roll them in sugar if I want to. Or we could just have them just like this. There is a little bit of flour on the edges that need to be mixed in. Were you yelling at me? You didn't add any baking powder to this recipe? I'm putting the dough back in the mixer, and let's get some baking powder in here. I'm glad I caught it before I chilled it, because I think we can rescue it at this point. 2 teaspoons baking powder. Crisis averted. Into the freezer they go. But before I can do that, these I think are done. I'm gonna take them out because I don't want to overcook them. I need to go through and clean my kitchen. Oh, dinner looks done almost. I think what I'm gonna do, because I'm not quite ready, I want to get the kitchen clean before we eat dinner. I'm gonna turn the oven off. Look how good that looks. Yum. And I'm gonna put a piece of foil over the top because it's bubbling all the way through. And that way it doesn't continue to get too dark on the top. And that way it'll stay nice and warm while I clean up the cookie mess. We got dinner done for today, plus throughout the weekend. Today's Friday, so I'm probably not gonna need to cook for a little bit because I'm gonna make, between what I have in there and then maybe tomorrow, no, we have a party we're going to tomorrow. Maybe Sunday I'll make the chicken, the peanut chicken, and then between the two, we will be set for a while. I've got a bagged salad in the fridge that we can use, and then for a vegetable tonight. And then we've prepped breakfast for the next few days and dessert for tonight, plus the next couple days, because we've got 6 cookies there. We got so many meals done. I'm so excited about it. I was running a little bit low with the end of harvest and preservation season. It has been so nice having those freezer meals in my freezer, and I definitely needed to restock. We did it. We got it all done. Let's recap everything we got done today. 2 of the peanut chickens. 1 I'm gonna make in the next couple days, so I'm gonna put it in the fridge. 1 for the freezer for my sister-in-law. 2 of the Philly cheesesteak, 1 for me, 1 for my sister-in-law. A bunch of silver dollar pancakes. All of these are gonna go to my sister-in-law. We've got 2 breakfast bakes. This one's already baked up. That's gonna be for breakfast for the next few days. 1 frozen for my sister-in-law. Meatballs frozen for my sister-in-law with marinara sauce. 2 meatballs with marinara sauce for Josh and I. A baked macaroni and cheese for my sister-in-law. 2 of the orange chickens. 2 of the teriyakis, 1 for me, 1 for my sister-in-law for both of these. A bunch of cookies, sugar cookies. They still need to be rolled in sugar, and the chocolate chip. These are now frozen enough I can pop them into a freezer bag, and we're gonna give those a taste test in just a second. And then we have our macaroni and cheese and meatballs in the fridge, plus I have 1 more bag of meatballs that I can turn into whatever I want. So not only did we get a bunch of freezer meals for the future for Josh and I, but we got a bunch for my sister-in-law, plus I got breakfast done and the next cooking for the next few days. I don't have to worry about cooking this weekend between today and the party we're going to tomorrow, And what I did, we are set. So I can finish. I started getting the bulk of these dishes washed by hand, and then once the kitchen is clean, I will do a little sweep and mop because on days like this, the floors tend to get a little bit dirty. And then I am off. I am off. I'm not gonna be doing any cooking for quite some time. And it feels good. There's so many reasons why I like to do this. I like to do it to gift. I like to do it to save my sanity. I like to do it because I enjoy getting in the kitchen and doing it. And I like to do it because sometimes I don't want to get into the kitchen and I don't want to cook. And by having all this food prepped, that allows me that freedom. Let's taste one of these chocolate chip cookies. So they were advertised as being soft, and they are most definitely soft. I'm really curious to see what this is going to taste like. Excuse the dishes in the background with the cream cheese, if you can even taste the cream cheese. Wow, that's delicious. If you like a chewy chocolate chip cookie, I don't want to eat any more of it because I want to eat my dinner. I got everything in the freezer and fridge and where it needs to go. And now we are going to sit down and enjoy a delicious dinner. I just need to mix up a bag salad, but I figure I would get this out of the oven. So if you enjoyed this, I have a whole playlist of freezer meals I can pop right here. You can go enjoy between now and my next upload if you're interested in a bunch of other recipes, because I don't think I've ever repeated a recipe. Well, that's not true. I've made baked macaroni before, but for the most part, I try to do new recipes when we sit down and do these big cooking days. So if you want to watch some more of my other videos, they will be right there. You can go enjoy between now and my next upload. So thank you for being here. Because you show up, I get to show up, and I don't take that for granted. The fact that you take time out of your day to spend time with me, I greatly appreciate it. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being you, and I can't wait to see you next time. Bye, friend.